You are listening to the Bullet List podcast, and I have to say, I cannot believe that my father-in-law introduced me to these two idiots.
All right, Bob, another edition of the Bullet List, and today we've got what?
Sorry, what? Yes, we have a great guest this time in this episode.
We are talking to someone who actually needs absolutely no introduction, which is Michelle Bruno. Many of you will know her from going way back, Fork in the Road, the Event Tech Brief. I've worked with her many times on many different types of things. In fact, we were just together at PCMA. How you doing?
I am great. Thank you, Keith and Bob.
So we'll start off with an easy question for you, which is, so what's going on with you? What's up? I know, we were talking actually before we started recording, what's going on with the Event Tech Brief? Because I actually like that little conversation we were having.
Yeah. Well, what's up for me? Pretty much the same thing. I work a lot behind the scenes of event technology companies, in that I've been doing a lot of white papers. The end of 2021 was super busy. Everyone was trying to, get theirs in the can. And it's kind of curious to me, white papers are still a thing. And a lot of people are doing them, and they're doing them about virtual and hybrid events. So it was a challenge there towards the end. How many flavors of white paper can you do on virtual and hybrid events? So it gets to be a little bit tough differentiating one from another, especially when you're working across different brands that may in many cases be competitive. But now that 2022 has arrived, it seems to have slowed down a bit. I think people are reassessing where they're at in the marketplace and trying to figure out how to market themselves in a more differentiated way, which is really good, because at PCMA, I made it my mission to go around to all of the brands and say, what's working for you? And sadly, a lot of stuff wasn't working for them. So I don't know, maybe that's something we can talk about later. But in terms of what's up, doing the sort of same thing, content strategy, content development, get to interview a lot of really interesting people and find out a lot of new things. So,
well, and that actually does kind of lead us into our first, segment we're going to do, which is, the great event tech implosion. I think the two things are related, right? Like the companies that want to do the white papers and things like that are trying to get out ahead of the changes that are coming. But we saw it with Hopin. I think, was it Friday? Hopin laid off like 15% of their workforce. I believe Julius was actually one of the folks, which that was a dumb move on Hopin's part, but whatever. Do you see that there is going to be the giant implosion coming of all of these companies that ballooned, and now this bubble is about to pop?
I think it's inevitable that the market would thin out. It's always happened. It's just logical. The marketplace for those types of technology companies was way too crowded, and the fact that venture capital came in and sort of, buoyed them up, maybe in a way that was a little bit premature. We didn't have that many more clients for the companies to serve, unless you really dive into the enterprise space versus association. And it just always happens, when you have a really crowded space, eventually it gets thinned out. It's just kind of a survival of the fittest, or survival of those that can adapt faster. And I don't know that, I think we can see by the behavior post-pandemic, I don't know that the marketplace was actually even ready for that kind of, infusion of technology. So for me, it doesn't seem unnatural that this would happen.
No, and you're right, but that, I don't know if that's a whole other topic, that the marketplace isn't ready. In the meetings and event space, when are we going to be ready? We are so typically most of the industry is so far behind the curve when it comes to technology that it seems that we're always playing catch up.
Yeah.
You know, we never, I don't know, we're always 2 steps forward, 5 steps back.
Well, the reason for that is that we don't ever innovate. We don't ever invent anything just for the event industry. We always borrow from outside the industry and adapt it. And that there's danger in that. And I've always thought over the years that our industry could do a lot more to foster innovation. The associations could become way more invested in actually maybe funding startups that are endemic to our industry, and they never have. I don't think they ever will. And because of that, we're always going to be, sort of captive, to whatever is happening on the outside. And we have this sort of propensity to just go after the shiny thing. It happened with mobile apps. Remember, it's like, oh, Apple invented like mobile apps, and then everyone had to have a mobile app, and then the organizations didn't want to adapt mobile apps because it was an extra cost, and mobile apps, and then eventually everyone adapted mobile apps, and it wasn't really a thing anymore. But we didn't invent mobile apps. We borrowed it from outside, and at least that worked out. But the same thing is going to happen with every new sort of shiny thing, unless we get a little bit smarter about inventing our own stuff.
Yeah, that that is actually kind of true. We do tend to rob from other places and bring it into the industry, and then everyone is always like, well, it doesn't work that great for events. Well, it's like, well, because it was designed to do this.
Yeah. And when you think about it, there's so many places that we could innovate. For example, just the live face-to-face experience. Why does it have to be so fragmented for the attendees? From the time you decide to attend, to booking your hotel, to doing all this stuff, it's just a what show in so many respects. Why can't it be a smooth, frictionless, once you make that decision to attend something in person, why can't it just like everything fall into place a little bit more magically, including the on-site experience? Why is it that I can't go into a booth where I'm interested in something and automatically, information comes into my inbox? I mean, we have all the technology for all of this stuff. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't flow. It's not seamless. And why can't we invest in that if we're so convinced that face-to-face experiences are privileged above anything else, which is what we've grown up learning and having that sort of jammed down our throats? Why can't it be better? It's not.
Yeah, which actually is a great segue, to our kind of where we want to go with this, because if we are not that good at our existing technology, if we are not that good at adopting things, because it is completely possible to have someone walk into a booth, and if they're interested in that booth, they can start getting all that data can start coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for technologies like the metaverse? Right? How are we, is it only how, and I guess you're always going to have the Red Bulls of the world, right? That are going to be, that have the budgets and have the ability to adopt things like the metaverse. How are associations, smaller organizations, how are they going to deal with something like the metaverse? And do you think that we're even there yet?
So I think we need to back up just maybe a few steps before that. For one thing, our industry has killed the entrepreneur. Whether it's venture capital that's come in to, support the for-profit organizers, or it's just associations being as risk averse as they always have been and making every decision with a board. There's just so few live events that are entrepreneurial and risk-taking by nature. So because of that, our industry has sort of grown up in this risk-averse, I don't want to fail world, which is not ripe for things like the metaverse. On the other hand, if we're going to have sort of these 2 and maybe 3 streams of event types, one is the in-person, one is pure virtual, and the third is sort of what we're calling hybrid. We're going to have to make each of those 3 experiences exceptional. When we're live, we have to double down on being in an intimate space with other people. If it's going to be virtual, we have to double down on that being so immersive and so functional in terms of absorbing and participating in content that it has to be exceptional. If we're going to do a little bit of both, that has to in itself be exceptional. So the way that I see the metaverse, one aspect of it is it's a way for the virtual element to be ultimately exceptional, to be immersive, to be colorful, to be entertaining, to be all of those ways to really go all in for participants in a way that is completely unusual and exclusive and differentiated from an in-person experience, which is something that's totally not virtual. It's almost like the polar opposite. Hybrid is a weird thing because you got to take a little bit of all of it. Maybe, we don't know because nobody's really doing it that well. Maybe that'll go away. It'll be one or the other. But in terms of metaverse, I see it as the end goal of a virtual experience, and it has to be a direction that we pursue because what we have as virtual right now isn't all that great. In the same way as what we have as in person now isn't all that great, in my opinion. So that's at least a start of the conversation on metaverse. Forget the technology and what it is and what it does and all the places we can go. We first have to kind of agree on where it fits in our ecosystem of event types.
Yeah. We need to figure out the why.
Yeah.
Before we figure out the how.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I was talking to somebody at PCMA and they were all in on the metaverse, right? They're like, that's got to be the best thing ever. And I'm like, really? I'm like, are you going to get an attendee? Are you going to be able to, attendees, have to have faith it's going to be easy. They have to be able to log in or whatever it is they're going to do. And it has to be frictionless. And right now, even getting onto the current virtual platforms that we have for so many attendees is just not an easy process, right? We did, I did a very large virtual event where all of the speakers, they wanted to do ESPN style graphics, CNN style graphics, and fly over the shoulder and all that. Great, easy enough to do. Mm-hmm. Well, when we went to actually bring the speakers in for the initial testing phase, nobody could get into the platforms because they were all with like DOJ, they were, and their firewalls just wouldn't even permit it. Right. Yeah. So in the end, the client ended up having to go with Zoom because that was what was pre-approved by all of these organizations. They could actually log in and use it, mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes, even though 2 minutes ago, I was saying how we don't want to, our industry is always behind. I think that sometimes when that shiny object is out in front of us, we'll push it forward without thinking it through. And then it ends up being a disaster, for a decade. Virtual events are a prime example. I think you and I were talking about virtual events and what they could be back in 2008.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. These are all solvable problems. One of the advantages of not being first to market for anything innovative in the event industry is that the people that are adopting it outside of our industry can make all the mistakes. And then by the time it gets into our space, we will have learned something and we can, if we're smart, take iterative steps to actually invest in it, develop it, mold it to our will, for lack of better terminology, and the quirks that are, associated with the event industry. But we don't do that. We just usually go from 0 to 100, and then we fail. And then that particular innovation crashes and burns. And then we wait for everyone else outside the industry to sort of catch up and make it really seamless and frictionless. And then we go back in after everything's done. Why can't we just take a step back and say, let's commit? This is a thing. And I believe Metaverse is a thing. I don't think there is any way to stop it. There is too much money invested in it. But why can't we look at it and say, what fits now? What parts of this fit now? Which could be the VR element only, and then what's the next step? What will fit, in a couple of years from now? Let's plan for that. Why do we have to take a virtual event platform and immediately call it a metaverse experience when it's not? Let's just, in our measured way, go step by step and plan for it for a change, and not just be hit upside the head when it doesn't really work out for us because we weren't thinking about it in the way that works for us.
Would you say that one of the problems might be that the metaverse is being seen as a business model as opposed to yet another tool in the planner's toolkit?
Seen as a business model by whom?
Well, the thing is, a lot of people seem to be sort of going, we're going to go all in on the metaverse. It's almost like they want to have an event in the metaverse, and that's all they're going to go for, maybe abandoning other strategies behind them. And I'm just wondering whether, if they're going all in on the metaverse and using it as their venue, their place where they're going to hold events, is that a mistake? Is it leaving behind the idea that it's a tool to use as opposed to the thing they do? If you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that if it's just like with any investment, do you want to put all of your, hard-earned cash into Bitcoin right now? No. Do you want to just
wait? I should have done that.
Yeah. I mean, even though it sounds so exciting and it's all over the internet, and now ads are following you anywhere you go in to even learn about it. Now Bitcoin is, the ad is following you around. Do you want to overinvest in anything? No. I mean, I learned in college, studying finance, it's just dumb to not diversify your portfolio, period. And that investment advice has lasted. It is timeless. Ask any, investment person. So just from that, in that respect alone, I don't think it's wise to go all in for anyone, either on the buyer side or the event technology platform side. We should take it in measured strokes with the thought that eventually we will end up iteratively in a place that is much better than we're in now. And I mean, the metaverse doesn't even really exist. I mean, let's be honest about that. Yeah. What it might be at the end of the day could be quite different than what we think it is right now. But I can tell you one thing, and I think I was sharing this with Keith at PCMA. My daughter's a third grade teacher, and they have opportunities during the school year for the students to buy books online, and the teacher kind of facilitates that. Of her class of third graders, probably 2/3 of them bought a book on Roblox, which is a metaverse type engine for game playing. So these are like 9-year-olds. So no one can tell me that this will not be something that in probably 5 to 10 years is not going to be a part of everyone's daily life. What happens to them, how we function, just like the internet was. And it's just best right now to prepare and do it, Bob, as you so wisely are suggesting. Do it iteratively. Know that it's just probably going to be, part of our existence in the event world, and see about the parts that we can adapt now, in a calm, less risky way, and go forward in that way.
Well, and the Roblox example was perfect because, my son is 16
Mhm.
and, us olds,
Mhm.
we are with our friends on Facebook or whatever it happens to be. They will literally log into games and not play the game.
Yeah.
Like they're in there talking about their homework or they're in there talking about their
Mhm.
day. And then they're like, oh, we should play the game.
Mhm.
It is the way that the younger generations think of this. It's actually an extension of themselves rather than something they do.
The reality is that sort of environment is just so intimate and so appealing. You can be with your friends. You're just in there, kind of with each other. Whether you're just talking and it's an audio type of prompt, or you're seeing them visually as avatars. There's something really, really kind of special and engaging about that. I don't care what anyone says, and it should be that way. So why can't we build on the really good aspects of it? Because there's going to be some bad stuff. I just had a really great conversation with someone on Friday who is, a tech luminary, and he's really frightened about what happened to social media and all the bad stuff, especially for young girls. That's going to happen, a million times over in the metaverse. So we're gonna, if we don't go at it in a measured way, even if it's just for the things that benefit us in the event industry, it's going to turn into a really horrible way to interact. And there's going to be a lot of sort of the dark side of it that's going to happen way too quickly, and we have to just be prepared for that, and maybe plan against it.
But for any new medium, there's always been the dark side of things. I mean, print,
Mhm.
TV, whatever. But there must be some really good positive stuff coming out of this now. The
Yes,
way the way it's enabled people to do new things that they couldn't do before.
exactly. And then the business models that are forming around it, and I'm not just talking about NFTs or minting your own coins and things like that, but just the idea that you can absorb learning in a way that is unusual and fulfilling, and puts you in a position to absorb material and really important you know things in a very effective way, is one thing that we could really think about and double down on. To be in sort of a flow state, a really immersive situation when you're learning something that's really important to you personally and professionally, is something we should not cast aside. It's not all about playing and being entertained. It's also about learning and being in situations with other people where you learn together, even though you're apart. There's something really special and provocative about that.
Yeah. And I think, wow, I totally lost my train of thought.
See, it's happening. I put you in a flow state, Keith. I got your mind thinking. That happens to me all the time. I just start going down a road, and then I forget about what we were really, on the subject we were really
Well,
talking
it was
about.
funny because I had something a question, and then I was actually thinking, ooh, we can go to this is a great segue into here, and then it just stopped.
Yeah, all I'm going to say is I am by no means a metaverse expert, but what I have experienced and what I have learned, I see tremendous potential for good in that. And at the end of the day, right now, today, to sort of address your question, Bob, I think that organizations would be foolish not to start making inroads, both on the technology side and the event organizer side, on the enterprise side, to start thinking about how this particular direction of technology is going to impact them, good, bad, or otherwise, and what they should do to prepare and iterate alongside of it. It's just going to be one of those things that will evolve quickly, and we're going to be left behind. I'm going to ask you, do you think there's any way that we're going to go back to a point where someone's going to go, oh, VR, AR, the metaverse, any of that stuff. So yesterday, not going there. Is there any chance?
No.
Well, and I think this is actually a huge topic for a whole different episode. Is that I feel really bad for the planners and the organizations that are thinking that going back to just live only, and it's going to go back to the way it was before 2019. They're like, oh, we're going back to normal. No, we're not.
Planners have an even bigger problem. And Dahlia and I did this session on something about event technology. I don't remember what it was, but people were really active. The attendees, the audience members were really animated. But one planner came up to me afterwards, and she posed this question that has been posed to me many, many times. And it is, what do I do about my boss who will not let me purchase, whatever software that will allow me to not have to use Excel spreadsheets all the time? And I am just like, I can't even believe we're having this conversation. In my mind, of course, it's not her fault. But at the end of the day, what I said to her is, not only is it important for you to somehow make the case to your boss that this is needed for many reasons, one of which is you're losing money, you're bleeding money by not automating. You're not being as productive as you possibly could be. You're not, using your resources optimally. But at the end of the day, to the planner, you are not doing yourself any favors by being in an organization that's only using Excel spreadsheets and tasking you to stay within that sort of corner of technology. If I were you, I would get out as fast as I possibly could to a place that is innovative, that will give you the tools and resources you can, to make you be professionally adept and able to cope with the future as possible. And that's kind of where we're at. Forget about the technology and automation and metaverse discussion. Get off the Excel spreadsheet hamster wheel first, and then start talking about that.
Well, and it's funny because it's an upstream problem and a downstream problem, right? Yeah. You may get a boss that is like, oh, this is great. She may come forward and go, here's this great tool we're going to use to plan all of our events. And then downstream, they're all like, well, we use Excel.
Yeah.
Just remember all the newspapers and magazines that folded because they wouldn't go online and they were still taking people's money for print adverts. Yeah, a few diehard magazines have survived, whether they're actually surviving because they're subsidized by their online versions. But the amount of magazines and newspapers that vanished because they just didn't embrace the internet. The same is going to happen to the event industry, that if a company doesn't embrace the metaverse and all the automations that are available and all the new different exciting ways of doing things, if they don't embrace, they're going to lose out.
So there's already a model for colossal failure, and it's the one you just articulated. We already know what it looks like to go down in flames.
Yeah.
So why are we not paying attention to that? Why are we not, looking at one or two or three different possible avenues and investing a little bit in each of those? Why are we not doing that?
Well, and I think that takes us right into a great segue into a way to bring it all together, which is now knowing what we're doing wrong. What are some of the things we can do to make it better? What are some of the things we as an industry can do better?
So for one thing, we need to look at each. Let's just say there's only two event types. One is the face-to-face, one is the virtual. We need to really look at how we can make each of those the best possible form factors that they could be. All of the things that work in face-to-face are really all of the things that allow people to get together in a more intimate way. So does that mean like lining up trade show booths one after another in a big long row, like a, I don't know, grocery store or a shopping mall or whatever it is that, or a zoo? Is that how we're going to do that going forward? Or are we going to look at, maybe more on-floor activations, which are in and of themselves really there are ways to meet people without blaring music. I mean, the whole idea of like networking in a gigantic room with a really loud band playing. I sound like get off my lawn, but that all of these circumstances that have become part of the canon of live events, right? The gala and all of that stuff are so not conducive to one-on-one meeting with people and having extended conversations and learning from one another and building a relationship and then moving on and having ways that you can connect after the live event is over. We need to think about that, less of everybody thinks serendipity is such a great thing. I think it sucks. I think being able to meet with people and birds of a feather is where we should be going on that.
Well, I think one of the things, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but planners need to understand that in order to make things better, in order to make for a better future, you have to stop being afraid to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're going to throw stuff at the wall. Like you're going to see something, maybe at PCMA or MPI, wherever it is, and go, wow, that's a really fantastic idea. You're going to take it back to your organization. You're going to try it and it's going to hit the ground and leave a crater.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Right? If I'm going to an event every year and it's always different and it's always fresh, right? I get that not everything is going to be perfect. But I will keep going back to see what you're come up with next.
Well, what about this thing called A/B testing, right? What if in the same event, we did it one way on one side and another way on the other side? And we just see, do people flock to experiences on the one side, or are they really more interested in the immersive kind of activation experiences on the other side? And you give each of the companies that participate both a traditional trade show booth where they can show off their tractors and their widgets, and a more immersive one-on-one kind of intimate experience activation on the other side, and just see. And you don't have to do it half and half. You could do like 1/4 of the thing has little tiny activations and fun things to do and learning experiences and places, and 3/4 are the booth thing. But I think there are other drivers that are propping up the booth industrial complex that are not
DES.
yeah, that are not particularly attractive or in demand even for the attendee population. And we just have to know, what is working, what does our audience really want, and gently shift over to those things that are more valued by the population and less driven by other things. And where there's value, there's monetization, and see how that works. And then it's not a question of, either you succeed or you fail. It's not a, yin yang thing. It's more like, let's try some really interesting and good things and A/B test it.
That's actually, A/B testing is actually, I kind of had never really thought about it in that way, but that actually is a very good way to do it. The same content, deliver it 2 different ways at the same event. And
that's also a really good, cheap way of doing it, because I keep seeing these services online say, we'll track your data, we'll analyze it for you, we'll do this, that your data's important, we'll data mine it. Something simple as an A/B test at a show where one half does it one way, one half, it's got to be the simplest, easiest way of doing it.
Because, and plus, I mean, I was suggesting that to do a real A/B test, you have to somewhat keep all of the baseline elements the same, which means like you have one exhibiting company and they either have a booth or they have an and they have not either. They have a booth and they have an activation. Yes. You have to do it kind of in that way. Mm-hmm. But I just, it's we have to do something.
Yeah.
We have to do something to try out these new things and not risk a wholesale failure. And that could be one way to do it.
Yeah. So to wrap us up, We've got, yes, we all know the great event tech implosion is coming. So I think that for a lot of organizations, choose your tech wisely. Pick the company that is probably going to be around and not get gobbled up or go away. The metaverse is a thing. It's coming. You need to get ready for it. And then some of the things we can do better are expand our horizons, right? Try and convince the powers that be that they need to invest in the technology. And then as a planner, you need to convince folks that you need to try new things. And I love the A/B testing idea.
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous idea.
I just thought of that in our conversation.
Well,
but that's what companies do with email, with lots of other things. Why can't we do that?
Well, can I tell you, I actually have a client call later on today, and I'm actually going to say, let's try an A/B test.
Right, and then and the same can be true on the virtual side. Let's do something that's just more like Zoom, or let's do something that's breakout rooms and where people have to really invest time and energy. And what works better? We can A/B test that way too. I mean, I don't know. Let's A/B test and A/B test.
Yeah, let's do it. Michelle.
Wow.
Thank you so much for being here. This was absolutely amazing. I know you and I talk whenever we're together at industry events, but it was kind of nice to actually see you virtually and not in person.
Well, thank you. And the feeling is mutual, and it was lovely to meet you, Bob. I look forward to many, many good conversations in the future.
Brilliant. Yes, we appreciate your time. It's going really well.
Take care.
Great ideas.